to our installation and for staying for our discussion, where we get to talk about how we did what we've done so far and what we think about it and what we learned. And actually, I'm not really sure what we're going to say. I don't think we really know. We just said that we'd have a nice chance to debrief. That's basically what we're doing. So I would like to ask everyone here at the table to introduce themselves, and then we'll just start talking. Oh, yes.
Hey, Perrin.
Yes.
I'm just going to do a little intro from back here, and then we can pass it over to you. How about that?
That's excellent.
Is that good?
Sure.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Force Space. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for finding a chair. Thank you so much for joining us for today's event. We're calling it 17 Stations, and it's an interactive exhibition, but it's also a discussion. Now, to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube, and we are live from Force Space, and we are located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. And here at Force Space, we like to work with our university community. We like to mobilize knowledge. We like to co-create daily activities that examine research questions, projects, things in development across the university. We're running this event, just so you know, as a live stream Zoom meeting, so anyone joining us there, please pop any comments or questions into the chat. Those of you in the space during the question period, just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you so that everyone can hear. Okay, that's enough for me. It's now my pleasure to hand it back to Professor Tymas, who's the co-director of the Design, Arts, and Culture and Community Cluster of the Next Generation Cities Institute, and is very much involved in making this all happen. Baron, back to you.
Thanks so much, Doug. By the way, as you said, did you introduce yourself, Doug Moffett? So, okay, well, before we get started with everyone else, I will say that one of the things about our doing this project in here is that it's not just a venue, but the folks here, Doug, Bertie, Jacqueline, are part of our creative team. I mean, they have ideas of things that would be feasible and things that we didn't think were feasible, but they showed us how it would be. Then some other things that they sort of advised maybe waiting till the next time to try. But in the process of all that, we got a kind of a different sets of visions on how stuff would coalesce and how the different parts of this would interact with each other. So anyway, I'm going to pass it over to Chris Gibbs.
Thanks, Baron. Hi, everyone. My name's Chris Gibbs. I work at the Next Generation Cities Institute, and my boss is right here, Ursula Eicher, so careful what I say. I look after design and development of a whole bunch of software tools we call tools for cities, which are really about taking a lot of the science and research that's done in the Institute and sort of translating it into effective software tools that could be used by people out there in the real world, as it were, to make some smarter decisions. And a couple of those prototype tools have been part of this installation. So I guess that's why I'm at the table.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm Ursula Eicher. I direct the Next Generation Cities Institute and work on smart, sustainable, resilient cities and communities. And I'm very happy to see this exhibition materializing because it was a result of a discussion, of course, that we have about sustainable development goals for a long while, but I'm a physicist actually, but we are in engineering, so typically we think about engineering types of discussion and we find solutions on solving energy crisis, climate crisis, and so on. But we never really think much of how do we get people motivated to actually think about it, to reflect on all these 17 goals, which cover more or less everything you can possibly think about, not just energy, but also gender equality, poverty, access to education, innovation. So it's basically the entire system of thinking that makes our modern world. So we think about it in one way, but when I started talking with Baron about his experiences in music, I never saw a connection of how we could possibly make these two worlds come together. But then he said, well, I'm interested in sustainability and I compose music. And so then this idea came up of composing music for these 17 development goals. And it all fell into place, but this is, I think, the first time it materializes in a real exhibition. And this is just a short exhibition, just a one-day event, but I think if you like it and if we can get some, of course, learnings from this kind of exhibition, I think it's a great way of bringing people to the table that usually wouldn't come. But are interested, I think most people are interested in sustainability, but maybe they are artists, they have more access to music, and I think it's a very innovative way of getting people excited about a topic that is extremely important, but where there's not enough action happening. And so I think it's a great experiment to see whether we can use this combination of music and thinking about the world's most urgent problems and create a positive, action-oriented atmosphere and engage people that usually wouldn't come. So very happy to have CJEP students here. So you're the future, of course. So it's great to have you here. And I think if you can bring this exhibition to different places in different settings that either deal with disadvantaged population, vulnerable population, people with no access to healthy food and whatever we can think about, everything is covered in Sustainable Development Goals. And if we can use these different ways of attracting people in a good way, I think that could really make a difference of engaging a very diverse community. So I'm very happy to see this happening today, and I pass on to my neighbor.
Hi, I'm Owen Hellam. I'm an undergraduate student here at Concordia in Computation Arts and Computer Science. I'm a member of the Immersive Storytelling Lab studio here at Concordia. I'm a member organization of Milieu. And we've been helping out Baron and the rest of the team to put together a VR component for 17 stations. I did most of the technical implementation, getting things hooked up and working properly. Yeah, it's been fun to sort of test it out and get people to try it and see how it works in the greater atmosphere of the rest of the show and how the sound complements it and all that. So yeah, I'll pass it.
Hello everyone, my name is Marco Luna. I am the technologist in charge of the Immersive Storytelling Studio, IISS. And yeah, we, alongside with Owen and Poki here, we actually had the task of trying to translate the whole crazy idea what you had in mind, Baron, at the beginning. I remember when you came to the lab and said, I have 17 goals, I have and space and music. Let's do VR. It's like, okay. So we started to actually, so this has been an ongoing process where we're trying to shape what we could represent in this specific medium, which is virtual reality, and how we can actually harvest the affordances of that VR can offer in order to, I guess, at the beginning it was like educate, illustrate, to make people feel something. We were not even clear where we were landing. So hence with Owen and Poki, we started doing all these tests on how an experience related to now water will feel. What will happen if we all drown? I'm happy to see CJEP student here. We drowned a couple of you guys actually in the experience, so that was actually good. And we got it recorded. So the idea is that we can have this environment that makes people physically react. So there is an interesting element here. No words, no nothing. It's just go there and just feel it. And come to your own conclusions. Is it something that is leaving you? So yeah, that's what we try to feel. A big shout out also to Jody, our coordinator over here from the Immersive Storytelling Studio, just because she's been helping us a lot to keep in line the production workload, otherwise we just wouldn't make it go.
Hello, my name is Pokey. I'm a PhD student in Concordia. I belong to the Faculty of Fine Arts. I'm with a background in interaction design and entertainment technology. I am taking care of the artistic aspect of this project, like including the environment and the objects that you grab and throw away. I take care of the art, but I don't know anything about music. So, I think Ryan. I'm not sure if Ryan's is here, but Ryan takes care of the music. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned Ryan. I'm glad you did. Ryan Naden is he's a music student who is in the jazz program, but also has a lot of experience in the electroacoustic program. And the electroacoustics program mostly works at the element of beginnings to create sound. So there's a lot to electroacoustics, and some of it involves areas like psychoacoustics, like where you think something's coming from based on the different degrees of amplification in each ear and the frequencies you get and all sorts of things. The way that you interpret, the way that your brain interprets environments and tells you how big space is and what it's made of and all that kind of stuff. So Ryan's job in this was, since he has the electroacoustics background and the jazz background and is involved in the production of a lot of the musical events that we do on campus with the electroacoustics faculty. His job was to take a bunch of music that I'd written, and some of which was just mixed down to stereo. So I sent him a bunch of stereo files of my compositions and that had been recorded in studios, and he had to figure out how to split all these little things that were in 2 channels, stereo channels, had to split them into 17 channels. And then he also had to take, and that's kind of complicated and fascinating, but we don't have time for that. But so another thing is I in my home studio, there's some stuff that I had recorded where I'm playing everything, and I sent him individual tracks for some of those, but some of those would have like 100 tracks. So we had to figure out how to mix those down to 17. Then some others of those might have 7 or 8, so we had to split those into 17. And then some other things, so I sent him about an hour and a half of music that had been previously composed before we even came together to do this project. And then 2 weeks ago, I was like, Ryan, hey, I just wrote some more stuff. So he had to scrap some. Well, I don't think he scrapped. He just sort of moved it out of the way. Some of the things, and just plugged in those things that I wrote especially for this. And the music, for me, was sort of the starting point, because I'm a music person, and was sort of the seed for my having the great conversations with these folks here. And then as I started to get feedback from them on what they were doing, then 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I wrote some more stuff, and we ended up using that and some of that. And that stuff was written for 17 channels, and it really has it was written in 17 channels. It purposely used exactly 17 tracks. And so Ryan's job was to take all that stuff and slice and dice it, and there you go with music, and create this loop that's about just over an hour of music that from all those different origins was able to make it sort of one continuous sounding loop, splitting, creating some kind of emotional contour with the music. So that's it. We talked about what's going to come first, what's going to come second, third, and we were up until the day before yesterday. We were still reordering music. So all that stuff over there on the sound table, Ryan gathered materials that some of which Doug recommended to us to go and find. So Doug helped us to source and figure out equipment to use. And Ryan and I spoke with another professor who's, he's not here right now, but he's integral to, his work was integral to the inspiration, Eldad Zabari, and he's one of my colleagues. Eldad last year did a great, well, it wasn't exactly an exhibition. Eldad just set up all these speakers in a room and it sounded so cool. He had it, everything split in about 20 channels. And you walk around and you hear, all the aspects and everything from every angle. Every place that you're in makes the music sound different. So I'd been sort of germinating, but I didn't know how to put it together until I saw his thing. And then, so each one, the point is that every single step in this thing created a feedback point for development for me. I don't know if it was like that for you as we talked about what each of us is doing and how that fed into your creative decisions. But I'd ask you about that.
I guess I had a different journey because I didn't hear your music none of the team, I think, heard your music until today. Which, by the way, I've been listening to it since 9:30 this morning non-stop. And it's amazing. No, I think there's at least 3 great albums in there. And
really?
Probably a couple of top 10 hits. I mean, no, seriously, it was there's so many genres mixed in and rhythms and instrumentation, quite amazing.
Thank you.
But obviously we were sat around this table, weren't we? Just big in January, brainstorming the idea. And it really just was like this nugget of a concept of a shell of an idea, right? And even to the point, okay, SDGs and music, what does that really mean? And this sort of tension between, do we make this an educational event or do we make this a storytelling sort of experience? And then each team or whoever's been responsible for any individual station has sort of gone their own direction with that. But I think what you've ended up with is a nice mix between those extremes, right? And I think that's kind of cool, because it is important to educate, but it's really hard to educate if people aren't engaged. And how do you engage people? Well, you tell them stories and you get some kind of experience built around it. So, when I went into the VR experience, I don't know how many of you have done the underwater thing. If you haven't, if there's time after this, you should definitely do it. But it is pretty sort of freaky with the water, coming up around you, and it's not real. It doesn't matter. It's like, okay, this isn't good, and then now you're under it, and then you have no rules like what to do, and you see all this trash floating around, and you just, everyone instinctively picks it up and flings it, for whatever reason, and you sort of. Anyway, the point is you're having an experience, and it's very different to your normal experience. And it does make you think about rising sea level. You think about the trash, you think about the mess, you think about your vulnerability. There are so many emotional things instead of it coming up as a bit of text. There is some text in the game, in the experience too, which is additive, I totally agree, but the core power of it is the immersion. I think we've all gone our own sort of different journey, Baron, and that's why we end up with quite a mix of stations. And I think if we did this event in the future, it would be really cool to get time to take some of the stations that obviously sort of pictures and text and enhance them in some way with something interactive, perhaps. I can say more about the sort of the gamified stuff that we did, but I guess we can come back to that, give everyone a chance to talk about their experience so far.
I know, just think of just to complement this, it was interesting because one of the things that when the team here started to actually attack the challenge of creating a VR piece was the little node that we have. So we had an idea, but it was more like, oh, let's play by ear. It's like just put our own footprint on this and not create for an installation, but create something that actually impact us, like would actually move us. And I think that was something interesting on the process. And that is something, I guess that is speaking on also the bigger issue in terms of how do we tackle this sustainable goals. Is coordination, it's important, yes, but it also has to resonate on you. You have to do something that really, really means something for you. So then what you get, what you do is something honest. And I guess that for every reason, we're playing around with the VR project, but at the same time, we're trying to think, is this something that we want to be involved in, with something that has our own process in making? We want to make sure that we have fun making it, and it's not attached to any educational product or any higher concept that we won't be able to be behind just because we just didn't want to at that point. We're just like having fun, but making something that actually matters. And I guess that is interesting in the process itself. And so now I didn't even have an idea how the installation will look like. We had some kind of drawings, but it didn't have any, and it wasn't until we just set it up, so, oh, wow, okay, so now it makes sense. Or at least has some shape that goes to the specific direction. So yeah, I think that is an interesting process to follow.
Yeah, it was definitely, and like you said, like it was a process. At the beginning, it was very much sort of putting it together, seeing how it felt, focusing on the experience. And as our development went along, we were trying to pull in a little bit more about the 17 stations sort of installation as a whole, adding some of the text. And then, yeah, as you said, coming into the space and seeing how we fit into the space physically. The whole time it was like push and pull tension between, just like a raw VR experience and also connecting it to the rest of the installation. It was fun. It was neat, and we definitely had some big conversations about, oh, should we include this? And no, it's holding the player's hands too much. And then, oh, should we remove this? Oh, well, then there's no content. Nothing happens. And then, so it was fun. It was fun. Definitely brought up some cool conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I was just involved at the very initial conceptual stage, and as you all said, there was basically no concept because it emerged very bottom up, which I think is a good way. And I think at the beginning we really thought mainly about the process of localizing the sustainable development goals. So if we talk about poverty, let's not talk about it in an abstract term, but sort of what it means in Montreal. So going out, finding the site where that is actually an issue. So that was always my view of saying, well, for every goal we find something in Montreal where it has a relation. But your point is actually good. It could also just mean finding people in the city where we maybe next go to, and they might see a problem or an experience from a much more personal level, because we talked about water and we said, well, okay, Montreal has a river, but we're not talking about, we have no real, well, we have a bit of a challenge of flooding, of course, but so the localization, that was an interesting point you just said, might not just be localization in a spatial sense, but also in a much more personal sense. And that would be actually interesting to see if we move to a different type of people, group of people who come up with ideas. They would probably come up with something quite different and very personal experience. Interesting.
So we had a class in the music department, and I designed this class this year. Every year we have different special topics classes, and so we designed this class. I designed this class called Jazz and Sustainability, and all we had to start off with was the title, Jazz and Sustainability. So basically what ended up happening, which part of the plan, was to tie that class to this project. So basically the stories, the class was assigned to find some local stories about most of the goals. But so when we say local, I mean, spatially local here in Montreal or in Quebec. So some of the assignments were within 250 kilometers of Montreal. What ended up happening is some people would find some things that were 350 kilometers away, and I couldn't say no. But then the other way that we thought of a local is how, as a bunch of jazz musicians in my class, or jazz composers, or other types of music students, what are things that are important to you? So we would, some of the assignments were to find connections between music making, the process of music, the sort of events around music, and then different aspects of the goal. So that's not spatial localization, but it is in the way that you were talking about, Marco, which is finding things that are that have some sort of meaning for you. And then the other way that we looked at it is what sort of psychological or physical processes or neuroscientific processes have to do with the goal. So they did some work on neuroscience, the brain, and music, and they read Oliver Sacks and listened to Wynton Marsalis interviews, and then they would draw things like that. So that's another way of kind of localizing, is that Henry? No. That's one of the students back there. So basically what we did was we took all the stories that they came up with, and that's what you see on these pedestals. So because there was so much interaction between the way that the students did some of the assignments, some of them were group assignments, we couldn't really give attribution to each story to individuals, but because some of them were group projects, and then, some of them I tweaked a little bit. So basically you have stories there that the class wrote, and you have, that was our way of doing the localization piece.
We also, a lot of the text that appeared in the VR, some of it I think was maybe pulled from some of the students.
Yes.
And some might have been stuff that you found as well.
Yeah.
So that was a sort of a way that we localized it a bit.
So on the topic of localizing, I guess with the SDG 11 and SDG 12, which is where the city player, one of the tools for cities, is got these two gamified experiences. We absolutely sort of zoned in on sort of real sort of success stories locally. So one of them, Zero Waste Concordia. So a very, very effective group that I didn't know too much about before sort of doing this installation. But as you sort of play that game and it's just a mini game and you start thinking about different types of trash and what to do with it. But you also get to see what success they've had in repairing electronic devices, headphones and things, and soda bottles, crushing them up into tiny little coloured plastic balls and making all sorts of other things out of them, and sort of recycling, reusing stuff. So able to surface their sort of successful stories, plus also their plans for the future, while you're having a bit of fun with that experience. And then the other one, which is about designing your own public space, because the SDG is really looking at how do you make public spaces in cities more inclusive, more accessible, feel more safe, all those sorts of things, but have more of a sense of community. And we've been working closely with the Jia Foundation in Chinatown and some community groups there through last year, and looking at how do we use these digital tools to try and give a voice to the community. So the mini game there is actually based in that big empty lot in Chinatown on the sort of corner of Rennes-l'Évêque and Saint-Laurent, that big sort of open space that doesn't really have any use. And you can just treat it as a sandbox. So there the experience is there's no time pressure, you just sort of get immersed in it, and you really, from a big menu of all sorts of items, you can start to build out the space the way you'd like to see it. And then after you've done that, you're told how that maybe positively or otherwise affects some of the issues that community is actually facing currently. So it was very much, and then we talked about a local success story of a community garden that's actually been, the community has got stewardship of and is able now to go and actually bring sort of local residents in to make that space come alive and do things they want in it rather than just remaining sort of barren. So yeah, we took kind of a literal approach, but we used gamification to make it more of an experience than just a straight pedagogical sort of educative thing.
I can quickly piggyback on. So you said success stories, and that's one of the things that we tried to focus on, because when we were looking at what are some of the barriers to people becoming involved in sustainability issues or becoming motivated to engage with them, one of the things is lack of optimism. So we tried to find success stories. When you look around on the pedestals, pretty much every one, well, yes, it might describe a problem related to that goal, but there's also some sort of thing about someone working on a solution, either locally or in some realm of life.
I definitely think that the VR one the component, it presents itself as pretty pessimistic with all the trash and the water and stuff. But one thing that we found that was really fun and has to do with success, or at least some sort of optimism and joy, is people really liked it. It was a lot of fun, and it was a joyous and sort of very goofy experience to be standing in this trash and picking it up and throwing it around. And I thought that that was a kind of a very fun contrast or dichotomy there. And we, in the text pop-ups that we had, some were negative, some were positive, and so it's interesting. And even like talking about sustainability goals while having very lively jazz playing at the same time, or music, it's a fun contrast. And I think that contrast is a big part of what I've been seeing here today. Yeah.
Another thing I'd just bring up is for me and my team here, it was a really cool opportunity just to see how people engage with the software, because this is the first time it's been, this particular couple of gamified experiences have been sort of played by people that haven't seen it before outside of the team. So, it was a double thing for us. It was, number one was to be part of the 17 Stations event, and then secondly, it was like, what can we learn from the way people are using the software, engaging with it or not, or otherwise. So we got a lot of takeaways. So thank you massively to all of you who've already sort of tried playing those things, and if you haven't, there's still time afterwards, that'd be cool. But I certainly like to do more of this, because the people that make some game experience are the last people in the world to judge how effective it is. You've got to see other people doing it.
Yeah, I would like to express some of my observations as an artist. So agree with what Owen and Chris say that, we don't really expect that reactions, right? Like from the moment that I create those trash, I was thinking about how to make this place look trash, right? So we have a lot of like empty cans and also the team members required to have adding more variety of trash to make it look worse. But end up all the human beings here having fun. Like the question in my head is, okay, this earth is not bad enough for us, right? So maybe next time we will swim in the lava with trash. I don't know, but I think the brilliant part of being an interaction designers or an artist is you can never tell, like, until the moment your players experience the whole installations and the play as a holistic entity. Because when you develop or when you design, you only see aspects and like pieces. But then when you put together, your players don't see it in pieces. They see it as a whole experience. So this is something that we don't really expect. And I think it's a fun part for being a game designer, a game developer, is like you're opening a present at the end. Although you know what's inside, but there is still an expectations, right? So you may not know, but actually I see like Owen having a lot of maps, like graphs, like I think it's calculating or like animating the water, right? So this is something that you may not see from the surface, but it in fact impact the players a lot, and you do not. We want to. I'm not sure. Do we want to depress our players? But I think everyone is having a good time. Like, I don't know. Oh, also on top of the jazz music, I also tell Jody that we feel like we have to hold a cocktail and having a romantic time on the pier with a lot of trash. I don't know, but this is how I feel. Yes, I'm not sure. I'm sorry if it is not the,
No, that's okay.
if not the goal. I don't know about music, but I do enjoy it a lot. Yeah. Any.
Do you all have any questions for us?
There's got to be some questions out there. We'll get a microphone around. Jax, maybe we'll grab that. And of course, anyone on Zoom joining us there, if they have any questions, just pop them in the chat and we can read them out for you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work, a lot of work, for just one day of. I just wanted to suggest the idea of maybe having little notices or something that calculate the environmental impact of the VR and the games, and maybe other things. But those are things that I'm thinking about a lot more. So I think it might round something out.
Definitely, yeah. Give some context. Not a tangent. I promise it's not a tangent. I took a interaction design course, CART 310, recently with Rilla, who's a professor here in computation arts. And one of the things was we had to design websites, or at least research websites that were calculating their own impact, and it was super neat. And I definitely think that's something that we could sort of bring to this and calculate wattage and stuff like that. It would be a fun meta exercise for sure.
So I was at a session with Professor Bart Simon last week with his Minecraft development group looking at various projects. And he put up a pretty shocking stat. I can't remember the stat itself, but Minecraft is like the game with the highest emissions worldwide. Like the power that's used, it has so many millions, hundreds of millions of players, that when you look at that from an emissions perspective, I mean, assuming the worst case, then where that electricity came from, but it was pretty sobering, when you look at the equivalent number of vehicles, for example. So that is an interesting point to think about the impact of everything we do, including the fun stuff, like gaming.
Yeah, I mean, but I think Bart is very aware of that. And one fun experiment they're doing is running gaming servers just powered by solar energy. So you can only play when the sun is shining. So, which might not be the best idea because you should be out instead of sitting in front of a computer. But it was actually pretty neat that he now has all these art students measuring solar panels because that determines when they can play. And they realized that batteries might be a clever idea so that they can play at night. So, and I saw the sort of curves of these art student measuring solar performance during the eclipse, which was actually pretty interesting because we all saw nothing until it really went dark. But there you could see this gradual decrease, and then of course the spike for total eclipse. So it was pretty cool to see, and that is also very educational. So you just think about it, the energy consumption and what it does, and maybe you should better correlate what you do to the renewable production. So interesting work as well.
Yeah. Any other? Yes. Any question?
We're just bringing a mic around to you. Thank you.
First of all, let me say thank you for all the beautiful work you guys did. And I think mine is also kind of a suggestion for the game of the trash that we played there. I was really surprised to see that I don't even know how to put the trashes. So I was like, if there's a way you guys can literally make a lot of people play that game, because there's a reason why different trashes have different baskets. So I was like, okay, there's a way that a lot of people, because if I don't know, it's not only me, then maybe a lot of people don't know as well. So like, I was also suggesting if there's like a way a lot of people can play it outside, not just here, that can really help.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's funny, I think certainly me and other people on the team, we had exactly the same reaction. We all think we're pretty savvy about what needs to recycle or go to an eco-center. And then when you actually look at specific things and you think, well, hold on, where do you put a soiled box of what about a box of matches? Where does that go? And so that was an interesting learning that we don't quite know as much as we think we do, especially when it's against a timer. And it kind of really puts the pressure on. So your question is, are there plans to take that out to, 100%. So what we are trying to do, what we are doing with City Players, we're going to be piloting it as a way of getting sort of citizen feedback about various sustainable topics. So partnering with several different organizations, ARTM is the first one that we're working with. And these little mini games, these little, like the trash sorting, are kind of part of the overall experience to sort of bring you into wanting to partake, because it gives you fun little things to do around these sustainability topics. So yes, I hope you will see it on a computer near you soon.
Yes. Deborah.
So first of all, thanks for all these great experiences. I think they were very unique. Like I have two like comment suggestions. Like first of all, like on the base like game, like add to the comments that is already mentioned. Like I think one of the main problems with the waste management is lack of knowledge where to get rid of the like the trash in which bins. Like, considering the number of bins are increasing day by day, like personally in my master's degree we had a course on how to like manage the waste, and like there I discovered like before that like I was just throwing the trash in the wrong bin. So I think it's really good that you're using like this gamification to like promote this idea. And like my suggestion is like maybe we could use like this gamification from schools, so like kids could interact since the early time in their life, and like basically so like we promote sustainability in that way. And one thing also about the VR game, like it's a very unique experience, great experience. But I was thinking, what would be the next step for you? Because like you mentioned that like, it's a very pessimistic like experience. So I was thinking, why not making it also optimistic? Like you have all those trash around, like you're drowning in the water, the trash is going around you. So why not using those trashes and build something? So we show that there is a positive thing. There are some actions that we can do to make the world better. Like, yeah, this is the reality, but how to make it better. Yeah, thanks.
I can say a little bit, and then yeah, it's definitely it's part of sort of that tension that we were talking about before, and about between like games and experience, and trying to see how much we want to make it that way. And with VR in particular, you want to tread a thin line between it being an experience and it being a game, because those types of things are generally quite different in VR. As for taking it forward, I think that we've pioneered, maybe not pioneered, we've put together some unique configurations here, especially with multiplayer in VR and some of the like syncing of objects and syncing of trash, the water. I think it's some cool stuff, and I definitely think that the storytelling, the immersive storytelling studio can maybe borrow from that in the future. Yeah, I'm curious what Marco thinks.
We have to see the reactions, and one of the things that we didn't calculate, and then it was happening first, that as soon as people were drowning, they're trying to clean the space. They were doing like that. They were grabbing and putting things aside and categorizing, and I was like, okay, so that's new. We didn't kind of design it for it to be like that. We actually, only thing we went so far and said, and people can grab it. And at one point we said, and what happened then? They can throw the trash to each other. That's good. That's where we stopped the discussion, because we have all this technical path to go. And then we see the reaction. And then we see, oh yeah, we can keep designing for a better and more enhanced experience. But at this point also, I guess the question is, how can we involve others, different groups, to get an input on the design? Maybe it's not necessarily, or experiences that are not necessarily, the goal is not to have a finished product, but more like an input from others, and just keep asking the question, how do you felt inside?
Yeah, I mean, very good points. And I think this, the fact that we're discussing whether it's actually more fun to deal with problems or with solutions or with pessimistic or optimistic scenarios is already interesting. I mean, I think that could open up a whole kind of research direction more for the psychologists, and seeing what makes people actually react. And it might be that the seemingly negative stuff is a better incitement for action than positive solutions. But it would be great to test that. I mean, on a really empirical basis. So roll it out in schools, get feedback. We need to sort of make these, we need to be able to quantify or sort of collect this information, not just observing people playing, but really doing it in a more systematic way, and seeing what actually works. And because in the end, we all say it's not educational, but of course we're aiming for behavioral change, because otherwise what's the point doing it? I mean, we want to improve the situation, so we need to understand better what works, or what makes, and the negative stuff might just as well work as the positive stuff.
Yeah, 100% agree. And one of the things that's nice about software you can do is you can put analytics into it. So you can track what the user is actually doing, what the things they're spending time on, what they're having trouble with, what options they choose, what they ignore. And so every single thing that's been done in that design your public space today has all been saved. So we know what people's choices have been, all the comments they've made as part of that process has all been saved. And so, what you do with that data is the next step, of course. But I think the ability to capture that sort of data, which is a lot more rich than just asking people, and couple it with the observational data done more rigorously, should put us in a good place, I think, to answer those questions, as you say.
And as we're talking about how to measure are we talking about like measure the influence of our games, right? I would suggest like also like starting from a design perspective, what is the objective of our end experience? For example, like Chris game is, okay, we are really teaching how do you classify rubbish, right? And for us, we instead of really teaching people something, we're more like delivering an experience that is kind of like bridging the gap between something that is seemingly very high level. Oh, we are talking about sustainable goals that like we need like a concerted effort from all human beings, but now we are like pulling it down to a level that can like provoke like public discourse to something that we can really assess and talk about. And up to this point, from a design perspective, and I agree with what Lynn suggested earlier, is it might seem a little bit lack on the interaction design or like user experience design. Like, how do we not to break immersion, and how do we use the user experience design to kind of like hint to players, oh, this is a game that do not really require you to do something. There are VR games that really have you inside and just tell you a story. You are put into the shoes of one of the characters and experience that story. That may be something that we want to approach, but like seeing the difference between our game and their game is, okay, their games have like a narrative, have characters, have dialogue, have audio, all those subtle environmental storytelling, hinting the players what you're expected to do inside the game, and how do we link these actions to the ultimate objective. Oh, this is what we want you to really experience. So I think this is also like from a design perspective, from what we want to deliver and how do we measure it. So yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a question over there too. Deborah, yeah.
Hi.
Then you next to.
I want to commend everybody on a fabulous exhibition here. But I keep thinking about the first initial meeting we had with you, Baron, and I was fascinated to find out how connecting music to sustainable goals would be. And I experienced the texture of the sounds, the music that you and your students created, and I kept thinking, because electronics has such intrinsic abilities to be manipulated and manipulate people that are experiencing the music, have you considered having some kind of a connection between the different stations and changes to the music scope that you've created?
We, today,
Yeah?
in the process of that, Ryan and I, and I'm not sure if we talked about, but we did talk about, or maybe Jody, did we talk about? Anyway, I talked with somebody today. I think, for sure, Ryan, who helped with the mixing, who did the mixing, we talked about putting more consistent distribution of sounds in different speakers related to the other activities. So today we didn't have, for example, all the treble sounds or all the harmonium sounds or something going to one area all the time. Every single piece had something different, and it wasn't, I mean, every single piece of music that connected to the next piece of music had a different distribution of sounds. The next time, I think we will be more aware of how we could tie the audio events to what's going on in particular parts of the room. Yeah.
I like that because, as we all know, music heals and music motivates, and music has all kinds of purposes. And because these are goals to direct humans to sustainability, and directed by the music itself in whatever way that you deem fit, would be, I think, a really exciting proposal or experiment anyway. I don't know if it would work, but.
Sure. I think there's some things that we had to do based on the technical things we had available right now. So, and also decisions we made about materials we wanted to use for certain principles. We wanted to use recycled materials and things for some of this stuff. So we used the recycled speakers, and we used some audio, some drivers, like some mini amps that we had connected, were for, principles that we wanted to try to embody and, and follow. But I think next time we do it, we'll have more information about ways to connect various elements, audio, visual, and then gaming, and then we might even, who knows, maybe we'll come up with some ways to have the VR and the gaming elements interact with each other. Who knows? I mean, we have to have these conversations over time, but there's definitely room for more, I should say, coordinated interaction between the various elements of the installation. Thank you.
Just following, there is still work in progress to do. Sorry, guys, I have to leave. I just learned that there is a school bus strike right now happening, so I have to go take my car. It was great to actually be around, and I hope that you can get all the feedback we can for this crazy project.
Thank you. Well, I think we have time for one more question. I think. Oh, Joe.
I wonder if I should drop this one. First of all, thank you for the exhibition and the discussion. There's going to be lots of things that we can talk about with our students. Thank you for allowing us to come today with a bunch of SageUp students. One thing that really struck me about the conversation here and what we've experienced in the short time we've been here is this kind of notion of locality, the very personal, like all these different points of view coming together around a very abstract concept. So this notion of locality I think is really interesting. I wondered if you might comment on transporting like the capacity for arts and technology to transport into other localities. So to take a global perspective. And I guess the example I was thinking about is like VR can bring you to that place, right? And so that from your local perspective, you can get into somebody else's local perspective as well. That might be an interesting thing to explore.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you put it exactly there. We can essentially put ourselves wherever we want. The environment itself was abstract. I mean, it was old port was what we were going for, but could be easily themed, especially with the inclusion of like changing the text to fit other things. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, although, I mean, not all stations are VR stations. So I think the goal was more for completeness, let's cover them all. And as I said, we had very, very little time, very little resources. So that's why some are much more sophisticated, like the VR one or the gaming. But so I think in future, if we could build it up to cover all 17 stations, then we could do it anywhere. But I think the idea was at the beginning, of course, it should not stop at this one-day event. We will take the installations back to the Cities Institute, so we put them in the foyer. So for sure, it won't disappear. And then we think of new locations to bring it. And I think this thing about new locations and getting people to come, you always, it's again a people's thing. You need a connection, you need to say, well, let's bring it to a school or let's do it somewhere else. And then of course the people who curate that kind of exhibition could create their own local content. And I think that would make it very, very interesting because in the end, I mean, of spreading the news, getting people involved, excited about the topic, that's part of the game to make that actually happen. And then in the end, it is human. It's not just a virtual thing.
Yeah, and I was going to say, these experiences don't have to be electronic. You could have card games, board games. You could have stuff that gets some kind of interaction. And I think it's the localization is about the individual. So it's about you thinking about the SDGs in a way that makes sense to you. So we thought, okay, make it Montreal-based, but it'd be even better if it was like, okay, my own personal kind of choices and behaviors. And can you use some other kind of little interactive experience? It's a short little thing that, maybe it brings a few people, different people that don't know each other in the audience together, and I think there's lots of opportunity with 17 different stations, each with a different flavor to unlock that kind of personal locality of the topic.
And we, there are ideas brewing for, of course, taking it around other places here locally, but also going, internationally or places where there will be people there who would be more expert in their local musical comments, their aesthetic things. So we have friends all over the world, we're speaking with about trying to expand this kind of idea. And, so that whole idea of things being digestible on the local level for people who live somewhere. Yeah, we want to have local people involved in driving how we would build this somewhere else. I think we are about out of time, and I'd like to thank all of my friends up here for so much, And I also like once again to thank Fourth Space and the staff, because not only, there's so much that wouldn't have happened had they not put in more than their 2 cents, which is a lot of sense. So give them a hand, please.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all for coming. Have a great day.
All right, thanks, everyone. Especially Team Dawson, thanks for coming in for this. So great to have everyone in the space. Everyone online, we're going to be closing up the Zoom and the live stream now. Just a quick reminder, this conversation remains available on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to revisit or share it, do it. But of course, please join us again here at Fourth Space, and most importantly, have a wonderful evening.